So we're now going to talk about writing your bid, guys. And I'm just going to again, we haven't got a huge amount of time, but it's absolutely fine. Writing your bid, a logical, structured, repeatable approach. So I've talked about this on some of the other kind of sessions that we've done with Go for Growth. Again, assigning a bid lead, someone who's responsible for the content and the result, including asking clarification questions here, guys. So if you do have questions, try and funnel them all through one person. It's really quite useful for kind of keeping track of these things. You break down the bid into actionable chunks. You've got to be coherent across each part of your response. So you might use a bid writer, as I'll mention in a second, but actually you've got to make sure it's coherent across everything. The quality matters, so proofread your bid. I'm very keen of independent proofreading, whether that's you use your spouse, anybody, your relation, best mate, whatever it may be, as long as they're under kind of like the agreement not to share that kind of information outside. You get anybody to read your stuff or use a proper kind of proofreading kind of bid reviewing team, whatever it is. Really, really good, because they'll see things that you haven't necessarily seen. And that point that I've made kind of in previous sessions is that thing around, if you actually do bid, you should be able to fulfill the actual specification and manage the contract in practice. Don't bid on a whim. Okay, don't just bid because you think it's the right thing to do, or you're expected to do it, or actually you're going to chance your arm. I mean, again, entirely up to you how you run your businesses, but my experience as a buyer is it's kind of a waste of your time, and it's a waste of the buyer's time if you then find that you either can't form a contract, or you form a contract after the procurement and then it falls down after 3 months, 6 months, a year. It's not good for anybody, and it damages your reputation. Okay, so kind of really do think about those sort of things. And finally, I mentioned there about kind of using a bid writer. Again, can be problematic. I've talked about that in a previous kind of previous session. If you find that kind of like kind of your bid writer writes the bid, you then don't have time to review it. Effectively, that bid writer is potentially kind of committing you to something that you can't deliver. So you've got to be very careful around that. Again, that's down to yourselves how you want to actually run this. But again, these things do come out in the wash. They eventually get found out. So it's better not to kind of go down that line at all, in my view. Okay, some common areas of failure. So before our session, kind of myself and Jill discussed kind of some common areas of failure that kind of come back from the group. And these are kind of things that kind of come up quite frequently. So SQ compliance, so the supplier questionnaire, failing to understand, meet compliance requirements, accreditations, policies, procedures, insurances, all the things that I said in those yes/no boxes. People either saying yes and then not being able to meet it, or saying no and then not realizing that means they're going to get kicked out of the competition. They're not actually going to get through to the next stage. So again, look at those SQs, look at those selection questionnaires, the hurdles you've got to jump over. Really, really important. Specification evaluation requirements. So again, within this, matching the proposal to the requirements in the specification. So it's a bit like you're going into an exam and a question comes up that you can't answer. So you answer the question that you've prepared for, not the one that it says on the piece of paper. Happens at job interviews as well. I've seen this a few times over the years. People answer the question that they've rehearsed, not the one that's on the paper. Again, make sure you match that. Really, really helpful. Next thing we've got there is kind of like not answering the actual question being asked, or answering it in another section. Evaluators aren't allowed to cross-reference, guys. So where you do stray from your question, if you think, oh, that's okay because I've covered it elsewhere, actually that's not okay. Even if you feel like you're duplicating, if it asks for certain things, let's say like a risk register, or it mentions risk in 2 questions, you need to talk about your approach to risk in both of those questions, because evaluators cannot cross-reference across. Okay, so really important. Not weighting answers proportionate to the percentage of the score weighting or the overall quality price split. So again, something that I've seen here, and this is kind of obviously Jill's made a comment in the chat window there, which is really helpful. These kind of things really, really wind me up as an evaluator, where going back to that example I said before, the majority of the biggest chunk of that technical score is about your delivery plan. And then people will submit a very lightweight, very weedy, very thin delivery plan that doesn't really kind of have any kind of meat within it. And then they'll spend ages talking about in depth about sustainability. That doesn't help. Okay, so you need to do it proportionally to what it's asking for within the actual bid itself, within the invitation to tender, sorry. So that's an important one. And again, within the actual quality of the response itself, These are kind of other things that kind of come up. So strong statements without the evidence to support them. So, kind of really, really strong. So let's say our organization is committed to equality and diversity throughout everything we do. Amazing statement. That's absolutely brilliant. Nothing following it. Tell me how, tell me why, tell me what you actually do. So a lot of the what is there, but sometimes the how is missing. Key documentation missing, again, asks for a risk register. You include your approach about risk, but you forget to upload the risk register. That's a kind of common sort of failure here. Assumptions about evaluators' knowledge. You've worked with them for several years before they know you. They might even know you personally, kind of through kind of various contracts and things over the years. But actually, you've still got to write your bid as if they've never even met you or don't know anything about your company. That's the way these kind of things have to go. Word page count issues, too much, not enough, etc. That kind of thing. Superfluous information being provided. Again, one of my pet peeves here is things like the thing around sort of kind of glossy brochures and that kind of thing. And again, the copy and paste from previous caveats in the bids as well. We, as evaluators, we hate caveats. We're looking for a clear offer. That's the way the tendering process works. We tell you what you need, what we need. You tell us what you can deliver back. Bids that are full of caveats are so difficult to evaluate, very difficult to score highly, and actually, in some cases, very difficult to even accept as being compliant.